Welcome to this International Women's Day podcast brought to you by Acora. In the spirit of celebrating International Women's Day, today's episode is all about highlighting and celebrating the achievements of women in technology, as well as discussing some of the challenges that women in the industry may still face today. I am Wahida McAdam, and I'm joined today by a panel of inspiring women from various backgrounds who will be sharing their insights into what it means to be a woman in tech. So let's start us off today then with some introductions by my esteemed guests. So if you could each let our audience members know your name and a little bit about the job that you do. So who'd like to start first?
Happy to go first?
Go for it.
Hi there, I'm Bethan Davis. I have been with Acora for just over a year. Been in the IT industry for just over 20 years. I began working in the NHS as a support analyst, and then as I sort of found my way through my career and various roles, I found myself going more towards IT management. So with Acora, I'm currently a service operations manager. That means that I'm overall responsible for the management of all of the operational teams, providing services to around 16 customers. I've got 6 managers that report into myself, and we provide support from everything from end user support all the way through to back end infrastructure services.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Bethan. Very comprehensive, and I'm sure we'll have some questions as we go through, because that's quite a sizable career there of spanning 20 years. That's incredible. Thank you so much. And who'd like to go next?
My name is Adonia Nisroti. I am currently the threat hunting lead for the software Acora. I moved to scrutiny and then to Acora after I finished my PhD in forensics. I was initially the SOC team lead and then moved to manage the SOC. And I'm currently, I moved to the leading the threat hunting activities. This means I'm responsible for assessing our current detection capabilities, compare them to the current threats, analyzing pen tests. I work with our threat team. I work with our development team. I use the gaps that I identify and build use cases and then help them to develop rules and playbooks. So essentially developing our detection and response capability.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Antonia. And just for our audience's benefit, what does SOC stand for?
So the Security Operations Center is essentially where we offer we monitor different log sources for a customer and identify any security incidents.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Antonia. And if I can go to you next, Shannon, please.
Hi, my name's Shannon Smith. I am probably one of the newest acquisitions in Acora. I am an installations technician under our Acora One sub-brand for the SME market. What that means I can do any installation from installing a PC for a user all the way up to installing new servers and environments for a whole company. I've been in the IT industry for about 8 years now, something I just sort of fell into without meaning to. Been here ever since.
Excellent. Thank you so much for that, Shannon. I'm sure I'm going to be asking you some questions about that a little bit later because I'm interested to hear about how you fell into it. But if we can go to Shireen then, last but not least.
Yeah, so I'm Shireen Fisher-Beecher. I am an end user computing lead, which we EUC for short, but essentially it's like a technical lead. So I work with a dedicated service desk. We mainly, on our side of things, support law and financial firms. So my area of expertise is supporting law firms. I've been with Acora for 4 years and been in the IT industry just for 5. And similarly to Shannon, I pretty much fell into it. But yeah, that's me.
Brilliant. Thank you all so much. So it's really great to hear about such a variety of roles. So from my perspective, I'd never really heard much about the opportunities that were available in the technology sector. So I suppose my first question to you all would be, what actually drew you to working in IT?
So for me, I actually fell into it by accident, much like the other ladies that we're talking to today. I didn't actually, so straight from school, I didn't actually go to university. I've never done a degree. Instead, I'm going to give my age away a little bit here, but I went through the YTS, or Youth Training Scheme, route, due to obviously the opportunities offered to me at home. So that then led me towards a role within a general practice. So I've talked earlier about the fact that I started in the NHS. I started out working for a GP in an admin role, and for me it was a matter of right place, right time. So at the time I was sort of getting my feet into the table in my role. IT became quite prevalent within the sector I was working, so we started introducing sort of dumb terminals on desks, with the ability to log appointments and different things, and to take really sort of notepad notes from a doctor's surgery. So because I was the right age and not scared to press a few buttons, they sort of pulled me, into consulting rooms to sort of help, because I'm the young IT person, it seems. So from there, I then got an opportunity to step into an IT manager's position for a health centre, and then from there, working for a local trust, and I became sort of that go-to person. And for me, it was always less technical, but more around the data side of things, and what it was to actually offer a service out to the patients. And then sort of the rest is history. I found my niche in IT management, and although I started out in the public sector, NHS, which was a great start for me, I then moved across into the public sector, and obviously working for a managed service provider. That's sort of my
Brilliant.
journey.
That's really interesting. Again, kind of mirroring some of the intros that Shireen and Shannon gave earlier. This idea of falling into it. So that's really interesting. Shireen or Shannon, I'd be interested to hear your version of falling into the sector.
Yeah, I don't mind going next. It literally was a fall into it. So for myself, growing up, I wasn't sure. I jumped about, bounced around, wanted to be a teacher at one point, then decided I wanted to be a lawyer. I saw how long it took to do it at uni, and I was like, not for me. I actually did try going to uni, and I actually studied psychology. But again, I decided it wasn't for me. Anybody that knows me at work, I change my hair a lot, so I actually ended up going down the hairdresser side of things. I went back to college, got my qualifications in Afro Caribbean and European hair. So I was on that kind of road for a while. And I was based in a place called Wolverhampton. So for those that don't know, it's in the West Midlands, little city, not too far from Birmingham. And it's nice. It was a great place to grow up, but there's not a lot of job opportunities there. After I left that, I was kind of like, what do I do? I had family in Milton Keynes, which is where I'm based now. So I took the move there, and I just applied to an agency and said, look, can you just get me an admin role until I figure out where I want to go? And they came to me one day and said, yeah, we've got a great admin role for you. It's pretty much majority admin. And I ended up working for a computer company, a managed service provider. And I was like, this isn't quite admin, but it was fine. I got on with it, and I found it quite interesting. I was there as a contractor for about a year, and then they were kind of moving things about. So unfortunately, the contract ended. And then I applied for a role at Planet, which was acquired by Acora. And I came in with very minimal experience, no qualifications, none of that. And bless him, a guy called Dimitri, my old TL, took a chance on me. And it worked out. So, it's been a really interesting journey. It was a massive challenge at first, but I really, really enjoyed it.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that, Shireen. And what about for you, Shannon?
So my experience is more similar on the others. I didn't really know what to do. I'd just finished high school and going through college, and I wasn't really feeling it. I couldn't quite decide what career path to go through. So I started looking at apprenticeships in the local area and applied for an IT engineer apprenticeship. That was the only one that interviewed me. And again, they just took a chance on me. So I did that for about a year and a half as a support engineer apprenticeship. It was a bit more public facing, so anyone could just walk in, bring in their computer, tell me what was wrong, and we'd fix it. After that year and a half, they decided not to continue. So I applied to a company called Computer Service Centre. They've been here ever since. They've recently been acquired by Acora now. I did the support desk for about 4 years as for first line. So answering calls, just everyday issues. Then an opportunity came up to be our installations team, which again just goes around the country or remotely, just installing bits and pieces. That suits me a lot better. So I've been doing that ever since.
Brilliant, thank you so much for that, Shannon. And it's interesting that you say, that first apprenticeship was the only one that interviewed you, because it only takes one, doesn't it? And this is it. It's so easy to get disheartened with these things, but actually, once you find your thing, then you can really start to fly. Thank you for sharing. And I've come to you last, Antonia, just because it sounded like, unlike everybody else, you had more of a deliberate path to get to where you wanted to go. So tell us a bit about your experience.
Yeah, so mine was probably completely the opposite of everyone else. Um, so while at high school, I just, my safe space, the place that, like, the units that I really liked to do, actually was interesting doing, was mainly maths, physics, and programming. So I decided I'll become a computer engineering. So I moved to a degree for computer and electrical engineers. And then I got the opportunity to focus on security. I liked it a lot, focused on that, and then I was introduced to forensics. And that's kind of when I decided that I really like this. This is what I want to do for the rest of my life. Well, whatever, it's kind of for the rest of my life, at least for the foreseeable future. So this is what I want to focus on. And when I finished my postgraduate and master in engineering. I decided that I want to continue to do research on forensics, and I decided to take the leap and move from Greece to the UK to apply for different PhD positions, and I got one at Bournemouth University. Uh, so I stayed there for around 2 years, but it ended up just not working out exactly how I wanted. That my research was not what I wanted to do. I felt like my supervisory team was just not the best suited for me. And it was not really helping me. Like, I'm very static, I'm not really moving towards anything. So I've decided I will move to a different. I will move to a different university. I will find another team and another place that can actually offer me what I really want to do, something that I want to be proud of. And I moved to Greenwich University. And I finished then after 2.5 years, which was a real challenge, to be honest, because you feel at this point that, oh, I've taken 2 years and it has not worked out. So what am I doing now? I can't just keep doing this forever. This is not what I want to be doing in, let's say, 5 years from now. So it was a lot of hard work, but I think it also shows you that the skills you learn, even if you move somewhere else, they are transferable. You mature and you learn a lot of things. And when I finished, I mainly focused around forensic investigations and very current threats. So when I finished, I had to make another decision. Do I stay in academia? Do I stay and teach and do research? Or do I move to a more industrial role? And I think it was, again, one that was, there's a safe space of something, and then there is what you truly want to do. And then I decided, I really want to take a chance and move to industry and work for, someone that actually offers that on real customers. And that's how I moved to security. I started as the team lead for the SOC team. So mainly dealing with, helping the analysts on a day-to-day with any escalations. And then when it just happened that my manager had to be moved to a different role, kind of overnight, I was given the responsibility of, now you're the manager, you manage the whole SOC. And it was great. It was really challenging, but there was a lot of support by everyone else. But it just made me realize that I want to focus on a more technical role. And that was the decision that, I really like this, but I would like to focus more on something slightly different, something that still goes back to this, what I really like to do, but also helps us offer a better service. And that's how I ended up moving to leading the threat hunting department for the SOC.
Thank you for sharing that, Antonia. And it's interesting that actually, all the kind of the road that you've gone through so far, there's still that desire to develop, to grow, to find your space. And it's lovely to hear from all of you that actually you're still working through that. So that's really great. So it's again this variety of journeys, and it's compounded by the idea that kind of irrespective of your route into the sector, there's always that opportunity to find the space that you can thrive in, and that little space that you're most interested in. And it's lovely to hear as well about all the support that you've had sort of to get you on your way. So I want to ask you all this question then. When you look at your careers across the years, to date, what have been your proudest achievements at work?
Want me to go first? So for me, I think it's a proudest section of my career, if that's okay. So in about, I think it was 2011, I had an impromptu conversation with the owner of a company who provided ITIL training out to organisations. He offered me a role. I was actually happy in what I was doing, and it would have meant me moving up the country, and at that point I wasn't ready to do that. So because I wouldn't take the role with him, he then said, well, second best, will you do me a favour and will you present at the service desk show in Earls Court with some people who work for me, which I did. And it started obviously a relationship with that organisation. The head, I think she was the head trainer at the time, she actually then got a job in Australia. She then moved over and reached out to me and said, Bethan, you'd love to come over, you'd love it, you'd be really good in this organisation, I think it would be right up your street. So after lots of conversations, I ended up going to Australia. When I actually got there, it was actually my first role with an MSP and actually within the public sector, and it was a complete eye-opener. But as much as it was a challenge for me, it was almost like I'd gone home. It was like, this is what I'm destined to do. And then while I was there, I actually moved over to the west of the country, so to Perth initially, and I was only going out for 5 years. And when I got over there, I started out as an operations manager, so looking after one of the newer clients. They'd been with them for 5 months, but they'd never got themselves into what we call the green, so all of their service level agreement and key performance indicators were all what we call in the red, so they weren't achieving what they should have. We managed to get them into the green for the first time in 5 months, and that was a big tick in the box, considering it was my first gig, if you like, in that environment. Working with that organisation, I sort of became the fixer, so I got an opportunity then to travel sort of around Australia and helping lots of different customers and the teams that we're providing services through to. And then eventually they moved me over to Sydney, so I'd spent 3 years in Perth and then moved to Sydney for 3 years, and it became only the fourth female service director, and I actually took over a customer, a brand new customer as well. So I think that period of my life was a lot of learning for me, and I suppose acknowledgement. It just sort of worked out really well.
Incredible. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, Bethan. If I can go to Shireen, what about you?
Yeah, I think from my end, the two things that kind of stick out. Obviously, I haven't been in the IT sector for a long period, but in my 5 years of being in it, I think initially just the fact that I'm able to get to where I am now without any of that kind of experience, any qualifications, anything to kind of back me up. I came in that first line on the service desk knowing pretty much nothing, and have managed to work my way to get, I think during lockdown was when I got like my 2 promotions in one, which was a massive achievement for me as well, because it's lockdown, like a lot of people didn't have a job during lockdown, and I was able to get 2 promotions during that time, so that was really amazing. And then also on top of that, I think just within Acora, we have our People Awards every year, and I managed to get 2 awards. So this year I won the Women in IT award, and 2 years ago I got the Game Changer of the Year award as well. So yeah, those are my proudest moments.
Incredible, Shireen, and it just goes to show you, doesn't it? Because I know that working with you as well, it's all of that hard work. You know, when you're thinking about a sector like IT, it is all about that practical experience and what you're actually doing. You know, and as some of you demonstrated today, rather than you know, that education piece, or specifically formal education, because obviously you know what you're doing and you're still getting training on what you're
Yeah.
doing, but that sort of formal education route, it's really interesting to hear. Thank you so much. What about for you, Antonia?
It's really, I think it's really hard to, pick a very specific point. Um, it's not a specific achievement because I'm trying to really look back and even the small things, like I'm be proud of the things you couldn't do before, but now you can. Everything you learn, or how you help other people achieve something. But probably for me, the transition from moving away from just being a researcher, which is not really just thing, but it's a researcher on an academic environment, to actually moving to an industry role, it's probably the most challenging thing, one of the most challenging things, and I'm really proud that I actually decided to do it. And it's probably the first 6 months have been really hard. Especially, I remember the first week, I felt so intensely that, oh, maybe I don't belong here. This is nothing like I'm used to. You know, Even though I could clearly see that, my technical skills and my knowledge and other skills I can clearly apply them, and people are welcoming me. I just felt, I don't belong here. This is completely different. But, I'm really proud for myself for sticking there with it, and, moving in pretty much a year, getting a promotion, then moving to a different role and finding, move to something that I actually want to do.
Incredible. Again, that there's something there, isn't there, about no longer being in your comfort zone, and sometimes in order to get that growth you have to stretch yourself a little bit, and it does feel uncomfortable to start with. So thank you so much for sharing that with us, Antonia. And last but not least, Shannon, what about you? What's your proudest achievement?
I think it's hard to sort of pinpoint one moment in my career that is, say, like my proudest achievement. I mean, there are a few that come to mind. I know when I first started as on the support desk here, there was a lot of buzz because I was the first female technician that the company had had. So there was a lot of answering calls and going, "Is you really a girl? Am I really speaking to a lady on the support desk?" I'm like, "Yes, I'm real. I promise." We did have a couple people question if I was real. um, and I mean, in the end, I did build a reputation as being someone to go to and just knowing a lot of the customers' networks and just knowing all these little tips and tricks, to the point where I was actually invited to a local radio show to answer callers' questions about technical issues. And they said it was quite popular as well. And then probably more recently, I know Shireen touched on the Women in Tech Award. I was actually runner-up for that, which was a big surprise considering I hadn't really been with Acora that long. But just knowing that all my colleagues put me forward and trusted me enough and respect me enough to put me forward and vote for me to become a runner up, I think that's quite a proud achievement.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing that, Shannon. And it's really interesting that you say, you know, when those customers or those clients were first on the phone to you, they weren't sure if you were a real person because it was a female voice on the line.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would get a lot of people saying like, "Oh, can I speak to the support desk?" I'm like, "I am part of the support desk. How can I help?" So
Yeah.
it's one of these places here where it's a lot old-fashioned and people are stuck in their ways. So I think it was quite a surprise. But once I normally cleared that I was from the support department, they would just go with it, and
Brilliant.
normally it'd resolve everything quite quickly. So
Excellent. That's lovely. And actually, that's a really nice segue into what I'm going to be talking about next, because it seems as though for each of you, some of those proudest achievements have included overcoming some of the challenges along the way. So my next question to you each is, what would you consider to be the biggest challenges that women in particular might face in this sector, and what are the things that you have done or you've seen other people do in order to overcome those things?
So for me, I think the obvious thing for me is that it is a very male-oriented work environment, and it's a bit of a catch-22 because because it's so male-oriented. I think it can be quite intimidating, and I think the reason that it's a catch-22 because unless obviously people can overcome that and be given the opportunities, then it's probably not going to get much better anytime soon. I think I was reflecting on, this, knowing that we were coming in to have this conversation today, and I think I was wondering, why that was specifically. And if you think about it, for me personally, and I know, I've been around the block a little bit, but I think the thing for me is that when I was growing up, and even now, even with my own family and friends and young family and friends as well growing up, I see, a lot of even the gaming industry or the magazines that the kids pick up, or a lot of the access they get to things that they should be interested in is less about technology. For a male, for a boy, there's lots of it around, so there's lots of magazines, and they're very, very much male focused. And you, as a female growing up with your peer group and everybody going in one direction, so a lot of, you know that a lot of girls, as they turn into women, they'll always, they'll often go into the social industry or the beauty industry, and I know that sounds very stereotypical, but I think it's because, if your peer group are headed in that direction because they don't have alternatives given to them at an early age, I think it probably would explain it a little bit to me, and I think that's probably one of the main challenges for me.
Thanks for sharing, Beth. And I think, I think you and I may be a little bit older than the rest of the bunch here, but I completely, understand where you're coming from that perspective, because it wasn't even something on my radar, certainly. What about for you, Antonia? Because you dove straight in there.
Yes, I think going back to what Bethan said, um, it definitely felt, at least while growing up, also in a different country, not in the UK, where I feel like stereotypes were even a bit more enhanced. That it, I can't say really that I was exposed to this sector in the same way that like male students were. I was not really encouraged. I would say not in all cases. Obviously, these are individual cases. We don't want to, make everyone feel like there is no support from anyone. But I definitely remember, a lot of moments where I actually was discouraged from moving forward from either a teacher that said, are you sure you want to do that? Mainly male students go to engineering school. When during university, the more we started to specialize, the kind of more alone felt because there was no other female. When I moved to security, there was no one else in the class. I know it was just me and just males in my year. Um, which can feel a bit intimidating, and you can feel a bit like, again, you kind of maybe don't belong here. Moving, then becoming a researcher, there was no one else except me. There was female in the lab I was based, and there were more than 10, 15 people. So it can definitely give you this feeling that it's just me. Um, I think there's definitely bias, obviously, again, not from everyone. There's a lot of support from other people of different genders. But there's definitely bias. There are moments where your expertise will be challenged, even though you have the credentials for it, because of your gender and because, women are not really as good as men. It's like, that's not true, actually. Um, or moments where at least for me, there had been moments where I felt like other people would treat me in a different way, in an, I would say, unprofessional way, potentially, because I'm a woman, and what really can you do for that? I think even if it's hard, and I think in all these moments you may feel afraid and your confidence maybe, get affected by it, you have to stick with it. You have to stand up, you have to speak up, even though In some cases, you speak up and then you're being judged as someone that is overreacting, a very female reaction or anything like that. You have to set your limits and say, this is how I'm going to be treated. This is why I'm here. This is what I have to support, all the what I've achieved and what I'm saying that I can do now, my capabilities, my expertise, and that's why you should treat me and respect me the same way that you do any of my male colleagues.
And thank you for sharing and being so open with us, Antonia. So that's really interesting, that kind of almost arguing your case to just be in the room is quite interesting as a concept. So thank you so much for sharing. What about for you, Shireen?
Yeah, I think similar to what's been said, it's the kind of that feeling of almost being intimidated because you are heading into what is predominantly a male sector. I remember coming into Planet, I was a little bit scared. I'll be honest, I was a bit scared because I remember coming in for my interview and walking into a room of just men. Like there was not one female in the room, and I was like, "Is this somewhere I need to be?" And it was. I remember actually asking the question during my interview, "Why are there no other females here?" But it was, it's like we've offered roles to females, but we just don't have any currently. And looking at the business then, it was mainly in HR and marketing where you would see the females, but because they weren't in my office, I didn't have any visibility of them. And then kind of like moving forward, it was strange because obviously there's some times in the industry there are bad experiences. I'm not saying that I haven't had any, I have, where you are treated differently because you are female, but also that kind of overprotection. So I had experiences where it was kind of the opposite, in the sense of they treated you differently because they wanted you to be okay. So I remember just like silly little things, like one of the guys used to call me a nickname, and I wasn't bothered by it, but I remember my manager just being really on it because he was really worried that this was going to scare me away. And it was like, no, it's fine, I don't have a problem with it. I told him to leave it, and then the whole meeting was called about it. But I wasn't bothered by it. I think, depending on your kind of personality type, things can affect people differently. And I think it comes to what Antonia was saying, it's kind of standing your ground. I think similar to Shannon, when I came in on service desk, it was like, oh, a female on the phone. What's going on? Am I in the right place? I remember reading in emails, they'd send emails into the desk and it would always start, "Dear sirs." And I was like, I'm here. I'm not a sir. But yeah, and it was that proving myself sort of thing. And it similarly turned to that experience where it was kind of like, oh, if I want something, then I know I can go to Shireen. So yeah, it was just kind of standing your ground, being excellent at what you do, I think can make a huge difference. Instead of just, being mediocre, just always trying to be the best that you can be and turning people's perceptions round, to realising actually, yeah, we can do it as well. And just, yeah, being that person that you would want someone else to see if they were entering in the industry.
Amazing. Thank you for that, Shireen. And finally, Shannon. So I know that Shireen mentioned some of the similar challenges that you had about actually being a female voice on the phone for people. Tell us a little bit about challenges that you've overcome.
Yeah, I think it's just echoing what everybody else has said, is that as a woman in tech, a lot of people have like these preconceptions that maybe you're not supposed to be there, or they're expecting a man at the end of the phone. So it feels like a lot you have to go that extra mile compared to your peers to be able to just be on the same level of respect. And yeah, as Shireen said, you'd get emails in saying like, "Oh, dear sirs," or "Hi, chaps." And my colleagues would even be like, "Can I give this to you to deal with just to prove a point?" So definitely having people around you who are supportive is a massive advantage and a help for anyone looking to enter the industry. But yeah, absolutely just standing your ground, just proving that yes, you can do it, and being assertive, being honest, finding that balance definitely helps.
Thank you so much for sharing. As you were speaking, I was just reflecting collectively, actually, what everybody's been saying. And there are elements of actually having to work that little bit harder as a woman, potentially, just to almost prove yourself. But at the same time, I suppose the knock-on effect of that is that you each have been able to excel at what you do and in the way that you do it as well, which is incredible to see. And it's also lovely to hear about all the support that you've had in your roles, and how, you know, from your perspective, Shireen, you've had somebody almost wrap you in cotton wool, I suppose, you know, potentially having the opposite effect. But the concept or the idea that somebody is there and looking out for you is nice to hear as well. So it's not all negative, which is great to hear. So when I think about everything that we've discussed today, I suppose my final question of you would be, if you were to give another young person some advice about starting out in tech or in the tech sector, what one bit of advice would you give to somebody?
Okay, I suppose for me, it is be informed. So do your research, find out what options there are within the industry, because I know when I started out, there's this, I suppose, preconception that it's either you write code, you fix computers, or you answer phones, but there's so many things in IT, not just purely technical. So there's so many avenues that you can actually go down. I think if you're informed about that, you can then match those with your own interests and your abilities. So as long as you're clear about that, and also knowing that nothing's set in stone. So if you enter through one door, it doesn't mean that you can't take a different door as well. And it's also being able to, as you've talked about, everybody here today has talked about, is, be prepared to find your place and to show your ability. It's funny actually just listening to everybody talking around their own experiences. It was literally only a week ago I was on a call, and it was actually with a customer, and there was a lady on the phone, and she was absolutely perplexed because she'd been given the job of taking notes, and her response to that was, "Is that because I'm a woman? I've been asked to take," and it was tongue in cheek, but she made it clear that that wasn't actually her role, and that she would do it on this occasion, but that wasn't her role in this meeting. So it's probably another thing to consider is, being clear about what expectations you're setting everybody else as well, I suppose.
Yeah, really great advice. Thank you for that, Bethan. And if I can go to you, Shannon, what bit of advice would you give somebody?
I think I'd probably just say don't let the fact that this is so often regarded as a male dominated sector dishearten you from joining if you are a woman interested in tech. I think it's a really interesting place to go into. And as Bethan said, just because you start in one area doesn't mean you can't expand on that. It's ever changing, ever growing. So, yeah, just make sure you know where you want to end up. Um, Make sure you just stand your ground and just, yeah, fight for who you are.
Brilliant.
And
Okay, thanks, Shannon. And if I can go to you, Shireen, what bit of advice would you give to somebody starting out?
Similar to the other guys coming in, just don't be intimidated. Yes, it is predominantly a male dominated sector, but the only way that that's going to change is if we get into this sector. So we need to be that change that we want to see at the end of the day. Yeah, not to stress too much about it. As Bethan was saying, there's loads of different avenues you can take within IT. You don't have to be the most technical person in the world to work in IT. And also, I'd say find somewhere where you can develop. I think that's really important to be in this sector. Doing interviews and things like that recently, one of the main reasons that I tend to see for people leaving their previous roles is because they can't get anywhere in their career. They might sit at a service desk analyst role and they can't get anywhere. They're being promised, yeah, I'm going to be able to develop and da 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 da, but they're there 3 years later and nothing has changed. So yeah, find somewhere where that you can develop. And I understand, cost of living and stuff like that is crazy right now, but it's not always about money. Finding that opportunity and knowing that, okay, in this amount of time I can get to this place rather than just staying in one place, because they're paying you a lot and hating your job. Remember, like, we spend a lot of our time at work, so we need to enjoy what we're doing. So yeah, just having that confidence to apply for something in a place where you know that you'll have that opportunity to develop. You'll be exposed to different areas within IT, and just I listened to a pod the other day with Letitia Wright, and she was saying, you know, at the end of the day, what is for me won't pass me by, and what passes me by isn't for me. So yeah, just sticking with that and remembering that.
Thanks, Shireen. Again, you know, woman after my own heart when you're talking about development for people, because it is so important in every aspect of our life as well. Thank you for that. And what about for you, Antonia? What piece of advice would you give to somebody starting out?
I think it's very similar to what everyone else has already talked about, but one would definitely be, be proud of yourself for what you have achieved, even if it's irrelevant to where you're going. Um, don't allow any, other people or stereotypes to, make you feel like you cannot do something or you don't belong here. If you want to be here, like, then you belong here. Yeah, the IT sector is huge. There is space for everyone. People that come from different backgrounds, they arrive here, by different paths, and they all look different, and maybe they want different things. And there is, space for you to make the role that you want to do, and it's fine if you change your mind. You can move to something else. Again, it goes back to development. Take the leap. Move to something else when you feel that you are stuck somewhere and you're not progressing in the way that you expect. You get exposed to so many things. The moment you get an entry job, you get exposed to so many other things that you didn't know existed before. So every opportunity gives you more opportunities, essentially. So just follow the path, and appreciate yourself. Don't let all the challenges we talked about stop you from deciding to get a job in IT, and affecting your confidence. I think it's worth it. I think we're all really happy where we are right now. So it's definitely worth overcoming the challenges. It's a really nice space to be, and there's a lot of support, I think, from everyone else.
Brilliant, thank you. And I love that idea that actually there is space for everyone. So we've had some great advice today from some brilliant women that I have the honour of working with at Acora every day. So thank you guys for being part of this. I really appreciate you sharing your perspectives and your insights with us today. And I hope that our audience did too. Thank you all so much for your time. And for everybody else, we hope you enjoyed our discussion celebrating Acora's Women in Tech. And it's crucial that we continue to celebrate the achievements of women in the tech industry. And we'd always encourage our listeners to continue the conversation and support women in tech by amplifying their voices and support us working towards a more diverse and inclusive future. Thank you for tuning in, and we look forward to bringing you more thought-provoking content in the future. Take care.